Welcome, everybody. My name is Hugo Seabra. I have the pleasure to actually be at my working place. So welcome to the Calouste Gulbenkian Foundation, where I actually work on a daily basis. I'm very honored and pleased, and I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to moderate such a panel. I'm really humble and, feel a bit even. We talked about fear in the first part, and during the morning, a lot of fear was mentioned. Yeah, I feel quite humble with this panel that you will see. If you don't know who they are, you will see that it's quite an amazing panel. We only have 60 minutes, so I'll try to be very brief in my presentations because clearly you are not here to listen to me, you are here to listen to them. So let's really give the stage to those that deserve. And I would like just to tell you that I run, along with Luis, who's in the back, here at the Calouste Gulbenkian Foundation, we run a project that is actually supporting projects all over Portugal that use participatory, co-creative, artistic approaches towards social transformation. Among the many projects we've been supporting, some of them have actually been within prisons, and not just using music and opera in this case, and we've been working closely with Paulo, but also photography, video, dance, and clearly we've been witnessing the power, the transformative power that artistic practices can have in such a setting, such a challenging setting. But enough about me. I will immediately pass to the panelists that I have with me. So we have UK, Portugal, and US, which is quite good. And I will start in the order that is presented in the program. I will start with Ginny. But I would like, I'm sorry, to invite you during the session to use Slido. So if you want to pose a question, we won't have this opportunity to stand up and make the question, but Slido is available as it was in the morning, and I challenge you to make us some questions, because if everything goes as expected, we will have space for Q&A from the public, okay? So I will give around 7 minutes to each one. It has been arranged priorly. And I will start with Ginny. And now I will sit. Sorry, I stand up because I know how it is to be down there and you end up not sitting a lot, but yeah, now I sit. So Ginny Dougary is award-winning journalist, has interviewed the great and the good, as is mentioned in the program, and as MJ was able to share during the morning, is a co-author of the Liberty Choir that currently is a charity. And actually, through her lobby and capacities of making links and connections and benefiting from her previous life, I hope you don't take this wrong, you were able actually to follow this dream and to support in putting it together and making it hold. So with patrons like Pink Floyd's David Gilmour and the former First Lady, I don't know, I believe there's no First Lady in the UK, but Cherry Blair, you've been working towards this charity and this work, and I invite you, I don't know if you want to take the stage, to share a bit how you've been able to adapt this. Thank you. I ask the first
Hello,
slide.
just checking. Yes, that's fine. Yes, so I am, as has been said, Ginny Dougary, and I'm still a journalist, actually. But I worked for 20 years on the Times and did interview the great, the good, and sometimes, well, questionable Donald Trump, for instance, and something like that. And the theme about the arts is, I believe passionately in the arts. And how Liberty Choir came together was in 2012. All good careers come to an end at some point. So I was left the Times. And at that point, then we started working indeed on Liberty Choir. And with my co-founder and wife, MJ, who is a ballsy, charismatic American, to offset my repressed Englishness. No, not very repressed, actually, but anyway. So Liberty Choir, I know MJ, if you listened to her, would have said something about it, but it's a full circle charity. So we go into prisons, we create choirs with prisoners, and we form bonds because many of these people have not had anyone they can depend on in their lives. And we make that our mantra, that they can depend on us. And as MJ mentioned, even when there's been lockdown, we're not talking about COVID lockdown, you know, when the prison's locked down, we still go in and we yell out, and we've both got a quite good pair of lungs, you know, saying, we're here, you know, we're singing. And they can sing then from their cells, so they know that we're there. And the bonds that form, the seeds that are sown in prison then blossom when the men and women come out. And they make connections. We're in touch with over 70 graduates, which may not sound a lot, but when you consider that for every person who doesn't reoffend, it has an impact on at least 100 people in that community. These numbers grow, and these are people who are just getting in touch with us. We don't give them a package, we don't, you know, there's no other way that they seek us out and we say, please get in contact. And many of these people were people we met when we launched, a quite memorable day actually, April the 1st, April Fool's Day, in 2014. So not long, it'll be 10 years. And a lot of the people who are in touch with us are from that very first program we did in HMP Wandsworth, which was certainly at the time considered to be the most challenging, largest and most challenging prison in Europe. But we like a challenge, don't we, MJ? So that's been our flagship prison. And we are, you know, our big mission statement would be to be in every prison in the UK, over 100 prisons in England and Wales, 80,000 prisoners, and with a network of community choirs around the country, so that any prisoner, if they wanted to, could join a Liberty Choir in whatever prison they were in, and then when they were released, join a community choir that signed up to Liberty Choir sort of ideals. Am I, oh yes.
You said community, we have the right.
Community, yes, we had a buzzword, like a safe word. Community. Did we have, I'm sorry, I didn't notice, did we have the cover before that?
Yes, we did.
Oh, so that person on the cover, you can tell I'm unaccustomed as I am to PowerPoint lectures, but the man on the cover is Ross, and he's one of our ambassadors. So our full circle also is the people who we first were the prison governors and the chaplain in our first year, and now working with Liberty Choir, as are some of our prisoners from that first year working as ambassadors. So on that cover was Ross, who's one of our ambassadors.
He's through there.
Oh, there he is, Ross. And Liberty Choir, it says underneath, unlocking. Unlocking hearts through song. And why do the arts work? Must remember the theme of this whole talk. We believe passionately that the arts, and music in particular, is like a dart that goes straight into your heart. It's direct, it's very deep, and it's very moving. And in that small chapel that we're in, everybody's breathing together. And scientifically even, that our hearts are actually beating as one. And something happens in that, the chemistry, the sense of appreciation, the things that the men and the women write to us are really moving. So we don't know exactly why it works, but it works. And we also, in COVID, am I out of time? 2 minutes. Community. So this is Richie, Richie, who is in the middle here, and he's actually, this is quite interesting, he's just recently stepped down as an ambassador. So he's been ambassador for us for a long time. He was a lifer, and he killed somebody when he was 19, 20 in a fight. And he'd never been out in the community for 2 consecutive Christmases. And he's now coming up for his 10th year in the community. He's reconnected with his family, his son, Ricardo, who also works with Richie, giving talks and presentations for Liberty Choir, says that his children only know their grandfather as a free man. It's very powerful, that, for us. And here he is, surrounded by a lot of the people in Liberty Choir, some graduates, some just the community singers. Everyone's as one. And I think I'm almost running out of time, but if I had had more time, I would talk about how we restructured our delivery during COVID, which would be a question I would ask me. You know, how do you do a choir in COVID? And we created radio shows, 48 songs, How Music Saved My Life, and the 6 building blocks of modern music, which Richie and MJ co-presented brilliantly. And I think maybe that's, my time is up now, possibly.
Thank you. We will have time for a second round, so thank you. So Paulo is already on his way, but let me say something about you, Paulo. I've had the pleasure of...
say about me?
I've had the pleasure of, you know, witnessing Paulo in the most challenging circumstances, and actually we have to behave because the prison director where Paulo is working currently is sitting here, so we need to be very aware of that. So Paulo is a musicologist, a pedagogue, a communicator, an entrepreneur, a conductor of men, and this I added, so yes. He works in Pousos. Has anybody heard about Pousos? Probably.
Thank you.
You know, it's a small community in the surroundings or the outskirts of Leiria. Also a small city in the center of Portugal. And from Pousos, they've been, you know, implementing amazing, innovative projects using music and working from babies. And believe me, babies actually still in the valley sometimes, isn't it?
Yes.
Actually, that's where Paulo gets his energy. It's exactly with, I've heard this. And,
yes, it's true.
Okay, so I'm just quoting. And going all the way to actually people in their life moments of breathe, okay? So they also have an amazing work being done at the hospitals with those that are really at the end of their journey. So I'll stop it here, but of course, prison is the subject, and our paths crossed in 2013 with an opera proposal, a project that actually already existed, but wanted clearly to have a boost. And we, since then, been able to engage in an amazing journey. And I'll let Paulo explain all the dimensions of his work and related to his prisons. Thank you.
Yam pam pa pam. Yam pa yam pam. Yam pam pam pam. In fact, everything begins with babies. Why? Because the moment of our lives when we have the high capability to understand the other, to love the other, to give future to the other, it's when we have a baby in our arms. So all the professionals, before entering a prison, work with babies and families to learn how we learn. But it's not enough. We need to work also with people in the end of life. Why? Because when we are babies, we learn, but only in the end of the life we know what is important to learn and what is essential to our lives. And we need to know very clear in our mind these two subjects before we enter in a prison. So our professionals and our methodology, I don't have enough time to talk about this, but this is very important. But all our non-verbal communication, all our methodology live about this. Why opera? Wow! I need to speak. Sorry, I need to speak here. Thank you. Why opera? Why opera? Because when I was presented for the first time in the prison to give music lessons to the inmates, the director presented me as an opera singer.
And in the first chair, there is a guy, inmate, stand up and shout, everything but not opera. And that energy was crucial to me, because a word, like most part of us, we don't know what is opera, okay? Like most part of us, we don't know what is opera. And they don't know, but the word, it's incredible. And in the next week, we see operas. We sing operas. I invite lyric singers. And then, amazing, they understand. They are not shouting. It's theater. It's theater. It's words. It's, wow, I could do this. Why Mozart? Because the first opera we rehearse, it's Don Giovanni. Why Don Giovanni? Don Giovanni begins with a crime. Don Giovanni killed a politician, commendatore. And all the story are their own stories, their own lives. Everything, women, business, drugs, everything. And we use Peter Sellers' direction, because Peter Sellers put not in Spain of 16th century, but in Bronx today, with black singers. Wow! I could sing like these guys. Fantastic. Mozart. I could talk about Mozart effect, classical music, structure. I don't have time to that, but in 2004, we have done the premiere of Don Giovanni. In the prison, we put the orchestra downstairs, okay? The floor. In the first level, we have the professional singers and the inmates. We don't see each other, as you know. And the public are in the last floor. And we communicate. It's incredible, that moment. We have 2 prisons in Leiria. Now we don't work in this one. But we learn a lot, because now we work in a youth prison, inmates between 16 and 25 years old. Thank you, Joanna. It's possible to have a specific space to create opera inside of a prison, because we have a physical Mozart pavilion. And how we put it, cycles of 3 years. In the first year, we learn to be together, to respect the other. We share our music, they share their lives. Not only the inmates, because we work in the family's house with the relatives. We go to sing and to rehearse in the houses of the mothers and girlfriends. And we learn to dance minuetos Mozart inside of the prison, outside, to join all of them. In the first year, we learn to be together. In the second year, we create together a Mozart opera or a new opera in a co-creation process. And in the last year, we perform, and the most important, we try to put the energy of the catharsis that all of us experienced in the process in the future life. Not of the inmates, of our lives. We are talking about inmates, forget it. The inmates are not those who need more help, are not those who need to be more transformed in this process. And we need all of us work together, the musicians, the artists, the conductors, all of them. And of course, this is the big challenge, but it was amazing, because in the first Don Giovanni in this prison, the director at time sang the commendatore role, side by side with the inmates, learned to sing lyrical voice. It was amazing. I don't have time, but parties here, parties was very important. Why? Because we have the best concert room in the country, the best orchestra, playing with inmates. It's not something for poor people. No, it's real, great, with an artistic value. Not because they are criminals, because they are great artists, like all the people that want and could be. And most important, parties, I don't say this because of what Hugo said about me, but with parties, we begin to think a little more about this. Ethics, evaluation, social impact, transform people. Who have the right to transform the other? I'm the good one, you are the bad one. I need to transform you to be better. Why? It's important to think about this and to measure, to find information to measure all of this process. But forget all the methodologies and all parties. We need to talk about people, real people, because we are talking about people. Jackson was one of the biggest leaders we have in the prison. The biggest. You may imagine what every kind of leadership in the prison. Okay? And became one of the leaders of the opera. Wrote a rap to mixed with Mozart overture, and with a big crime, in the first Freedom Day, you know where he goes? To the Lisbon Opera Theatre, asking for work. I've been a soloist in opera in prison. Of course. A few days after, was shut in his neighborhood and is not anymore physically with us. Because what is important to do, it's not only inside of the prison. It's because of that that we work 60% with families and 40% inside of the prison with inmates. Why? We are in the backstage of Gulbenkian Foundation main auditorium. I could say the name, Tiago, his name, and his grandfather. You know that some inmates don't tell to the family that they are in the prison, a lot. But my grandfather don't know that I make crimes. But if I invited my grandfather to listen to me sing with professionals in the Gulbenkian Foundation auditorium, my grandfather could have energy, and I have energy and courage to share with him, grandfather, I'm here with other people that committed crimes, but now I have courage to tell you that I could be a good guy. We have hundreds of stories of this. But it's not because nothing special. Tiago, it's a great artist, you know, a great artist. The future. Nowadays, we are working with the Liceu Barcelona Opera, Irish National Opera, with virtual reality, and we are put like this. It's in the second room where we have been, and we have inmates in the prison in Leiria, mothers in Brazil, and an orchestra and musicians in the stage, and we create together with Raval communities in Barcelona and people from Dublin together create opera, not because they are inmates, because they are artists and they love art, and we love art. And this is very important because we need to work together. Not only we think that there is the artists and the community. Forget it, the community are all of us. The direction of the prison, the guards, the chief of the guards, the psychologists, the cookers, the counters, everyone makes part of the process. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paulo. Thank you. I warned you. So now we have Baz Dreisinger. Baz is a professor, an author, a journalist also. I believe also an entrepreneur and an activist. I believe I can add this. Founding executive director of the Incarceration Nations Network. And I believe Incarceration Nations Network is a whole enterprise in itself, but based on the fact that arts and prison is the subject, the writing on the wall, or the writing on the wall project would be the main issue for today's conversation. Baz, I invite you to take the stage, and please, green to change, okay? Yes. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I feel like there's an unwritten rule that says never get on the stage after an opera singer. So So I'm already annoyed, but no. Actually, that was, I think that was the perfect segue into some of the things I wanted to very briefly share with you all today. I was hoping you would indulge me in a few sort of general philosophical thoughts about arts in the context of prison, and then I'll share more specifically about one of our projects at Incarceration Nations Network, which is called The Writing on the Wall. So I think when we talk about arts in prison, and both of our speakers spoke about arts in the context of what prison does inside the walls among those who are incarcerated. We can talk about it from that perspective. We can also, though, talk about it, and in many respects, our project is more focused on what the arts does in the context of shifting thinking around prisons on the outside, of culture change, and how important it is in that environment. And I think I want to just do a bit of raining on our parade, and that includes myself, because I have been a practitioner of teaching arts in prison for many, many years. My work in the context of prisons got started first as a volunteer and then as the founder of the Prison to College Pipeline Program in New York, which is a university program that also guarantees people a place in university when they come home from prison. So individuals start school on the inside and then obtain university degrees as they come home from prison. So that continuity is central. I taught writing in prison for more than a decade. And writing, I taught creative writing, I taught first-year freshman essay writing, and certainly writing is this hugely powerful thing for taking back agency, for one's sense of self. I can go on and on about the things it does to a person on the inside. I think it's tremendously important. I also wrote a chapter in my book, Incarceration Nations, specifically about the arts in prison, where I spent some time in a prison in Uganda, building a creative writing program, and a prison in Jamaica that I'm still very closely in touch with, where there's a reggae music program doing all kinds of wonderful things. So I certainly believe in the power of the arts to do all kinds of almost magical things anywhere, prison, not prison, any context. But I think that some of the things that we have to keep in mind and sort of, I guess, consistently interrogate ourselves as practitioners are things along the lines of, and Paulo mentioned this, thank you, this idea of arts as rehabilitation. Rehabilitation is a term I never use for many reasons. One of them is that most people in prison, by virtue of being the have-nots, the othered people of the world, whether by virtue of class, race, sexual orientation, etc., the othered communities have not been habilitated in the first place. So the idea that we are rehabilitating them is both a misnomer and also, in so many respects, as you mentioned, condescending. The idea that I'm there to fix you and fix you through the arts somehow is something that we have to keep at the front of our minds as practitioners in this space. Because if anything needs to be rehabilitated, it's the society that produces crime. It's the radically unequal, systemically racist societies that produce crime in the first place. And so those need to be rehabilitated over and above the people inside them. I think of it also a bit as, there are many prison yoga classes around the world. They are a lifeline to many. I applaud them. I applaud the people who engage in them. But prison yoga is always the thing that makes me look up and say, wow, we put people in an environment designed to make them mad and teach them skills for dealing with the madness. So so we need to really think about what we're doing when we do that. That said, again, it's a lifeline for many people. I think in my book, actually, where I write about these wonderful programs, the one in Jamaica and in Uganda, but I called them a Band-Aid on an amputated limb. Because that's what they are. They're Band-Aids. They're ways of teaching people, again, to deal with the madness that we have imposed on them as a society. And so how do we actually stop producing the madness and the mad conditions? And in that respect, it's almost as if, I think the joy that any of us has gotten in working in prisons with brilliant, talented, incarcerated individuals also needs to be interrogated. Because at what point are we manufacturing criminals so that we can have the pleasure of rehabilitating them? Right? And in what ways are we complicit in that? And I'm including myself in that because I have done this. So this is not, an accusation. It's all of us who do this work. The option, what's the other option, right? Do nothing and just let people rot in prison cells. Obviously, that's not an option either. But I think we need to constantly be aware of these dynamics. And also be aware, too, of, and we were just chatting about this sitting down, the dynamics of the voyeurism that it produces. The people who want to come in and say, oh, wow, look, they can sing opera. And thus it further others this population that's already been othered, because it's saying, look, they can do Shakespeare. But as you said, they are we. It's all, we are one. And so how do we, in practitioners in this space, also work to avoid this dynamic, the voyeuristic dynamic, and the one that furthers the very othering process that we are looking to fight against?
Baz?
Is my time up?
No, it's
Okay.
Should we?
The writing on the wall.
I believe people have seen this one, so.
Yes, thank you. I couldn't resist. But I think when it comes to the space of the role that art has to play on the outside in terms of shifting culture and consciousness, which is, I think, work that we're all also deeply engaged in, I have a lot of faith. And a lot of excitement, because I think, to quote Paul Robeson, the great American actor, artists are really the gatekeepers of truth. And so we have a way of putting truth out there in a way that is enormously powerful. And so there's a project, and as Incarceration Nations Network, we are a global network. Our partners, Rescaled, Reshaped, are in this room. And a big part of our work is to amplify this cause, this issue, the work of our partners on a global stage. And one of the ways that we've done this is through art. And it is an installation called The Writing on the Wall. The Writing on the Wall, I started it actually myself and the artist Hank Willis Thomas. We eventually partnered with the architecture firm Mass Design Group. Michael was supposed to be here. And the three of us have figured out different ways to basically interject writing, drawings, thoughts, poems by people in prison all around the world that I've created in more than a decade and a half of doing this work in public spaces. And we've done this in a couple of different ways. And the first, we initially just literally wallpapered spaces. We would do this at pop-up installations. We would do this in museums. We were given spaces to do this. And it's deliberately uncurated. It's not something, agenda-driven. It's literally the fragments of humanity that exist on paper. And of course, prisons, anyone who's worked or been in prison knows that it's the last bastion of the physical written word in many respects, letters, writing. And so we ultimately created, with the help of Mass Design Group, an installation that was a physical installation. This is on the Highline Park in Manhattan, and it looks like cells, but they're all covered, and people would spend hours engaged with the writing and the drawings, and again, the humanity of people who were inside. We used it to activate the space and brought in all our partner organizations to engage with viewers. We had school groups coming. We brought in prosecutors. It was a wonderful iteration. We had plans to go on tour, and COVID hit with the physical installation, so we transformed it into a light show where we projected writings by people inside, especially during COVID. This is from a letter by an incarcerated individual writing during COVID saying, please pay attention to us. We are the voices behind the wall. And we projected it in cities all over the US, as well as Mexico City and Santiago, Chile, with different on justice-related buildings. So courthouses, jails. We did this guerrilla style. We did it on the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. During the Trump era, and they shut us down, but we got some messages up there and some amazing images. We transformed it into the Writing on the Wall on wheels as we started loosening up a bit. and we turned it into a mobile movie theater that played our docuseries, but also had the writing scrolling down, and the drawings, as you can see, this is done by a young person in prison in Mexico in juvenile detention. We also had wheat pastes that were on the cities, in cities, again, around the world and in the US. And then lastly, and this is our last iteration, so I can stop here, we are transforming it into a microfinance project where we're thinking about how can we both create a matrix of awareness around this issue, and specifically the issue of discriminatory hiring practices, the impossibility of getting work and housing and all of these things when one comes home from prison. So we're actually microfinancing small businesses in collaboration with our partners around the world and creating a brand that is the writing on the wall. So this is our first business, which launched in Thailand in December. And the woman in the photograph served 7 years in prison. This is her food cart. We have signed up, we're gonna have a coffee truck in South Africa, a bus in Pakistan, a restaurant in Prague, and ultimately really it's about leveraging the brand that we've created with the art in order to put money directly in the pockets of those being impacted, as well as creating a global sort of transnational solidarity and awareness around these issues. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. I'll ask José not to change. No. Leave it so that I show you the last slide. Because I was quite worried if Baz would come to this one slide, which is, whoa, when is it? We are seeking for. So I'm sorry, just I was afraid that you would. I'm just. Okay, José, por favor, truca. Okay, thank you so much. The time wasn't well managed by me, but I'm very pleased that we had space and time to listen to you. So I definitely need to come back to Ginny, and actually to make some balance in between the time management. And I invite you, if you want, to pose some questions using Slido, okay? I've been waiting for questions to arrive. For now, I'll continue mastering the
You are getting two for the price of one, though.
I do know that we have MJ, yes. No, but I want to talk with you, because we had a previous talk before starting before coming here. We had a phone call, and you actually said, I was able to channel the connections, the work I did priorly to what I'm doing now, also as a freelance, but mainly with the charity. And I would like to understand if you would like to develop this a bit more, because that was quite interesting in our conversation. So how are you, using all your previous?
Well, I guess I think it's quite useful, not just for the area we're working in prisons, but it's quite nice to know that you can have kind of been working in one profession at the top of your game. I don't go in for false modesty here, right? So, but those skills don't come to an end when your great, big, beautiful, highly paid gig comes to an end. You can channel them elsewhere and use those skills you spent your whole adult life honing. And, pushiness, not giving up, having great contacts, not being too afraid to ask for money, all of these things. I was also a founding member of Women in Journalism, which is a network across the UK of women journalists. For some reason, we took a very long time to do that when women in film and television had been going and, so on. But so I thought, well, come on, why don't the print girls get going? But I think they also interweave. So to some extent now, I'm the go-to person if there are fantastic dramas like Jimmy McGovern, who's a brilliant writer, wrote something called Time, which is about a prison officer and a prisoner and how their fates become intertwined. And I would be the person then to go and interview Jimmy McGovern about that because of the prison experience. So they can coexist very happily, and I'm quite boundaried, but if I'm interviewing someone and I say, oh yes, I've started a prison charity, and they show an interest, I definitely reel them in, you know, and one of our ambassadors is Jenny Agata, the actress, and she's also, in fact, the patron of another prison charity, St. Giles. We try and work with the Kersler Arts, for instance, who you may know, some of you, the huge arts prison charity. We we've performed at their openings at the South Bank Centre, which we talked about, which is, and so they can happily work alongside one another and enrich each other's careers. Does that help answer?
It helps, and I thank you. And on a side note, I just mentioned, you know, we were about to close the door, and I just mentioned to Ginny that actually the Gulbenkian Foundation has a UK branch, and immediately Ginny was saying, "Oh, I should be aware of that. So could you give me some context?" So this is already, you know, this is already going on the way. So I'm going back to Paulo, and my background isn't very close related with culture, but I've been witnessing and learning a lot from all of these projects that we've been supporting. And we do believe that the process is key, but there are public moments that absolutely are needed for specific, well, actually they go in various directions, the targets, but there are clearly advocacy moments that through public moments can be achieved. And I've witnessed in one of the performances here at the Calouste Gulbenkian Foundation, and I'm sorry, I'm going to stand up because I feel that people don't see that much, the ones more in the back. But the main auditorium of the Gulbenkian Foundation that you haven't been to, it's a 1,200 places auditorium. And usually the people that go to that auditorium are, you know, the more enriched people within Portugal. They also attend Gulbenkian events because usually they're quality events. So there's always an opportunity there when we have a mixed audience to actually touch some of these people. Paulo, I remember this one moment in the second opera, Così fan tutte, in which all of a sudden the lights go down on the stage and come up in the public. And one person stands up from the public with a mic. Would you like to say what you wanted with that? Because that's absolutely turning everything around. All of a sudden, the people that are there to attend have the lights on them, strong lights, heavy lights, and the inmates on stage and the orchestra are black. Would you like to develop a bit what you intended?
It's not fair. And they are not prepared to my horrible English. There is no line between inside and outside. There is no line. There is the same lines that we have between each other, all of us. And during our experience, we meet extraordinary people, people better than my son and my daughter. I take my family to the prison to present them, because to create trust, we need to create trust. I have a boy with the same age of them and a girl. My words don't have the same power. What may I say to that people about life? Nothing. I couldn't say nothing to my own children. So I invited my daughter and my son to go there. And they create friendship. And even now, they communicate with us and with my son about life. But one of the boys that lose his right eye in a fight inside of a rehearsal, Diogo, his name, is an extraordinary example of resilience, because in the beginning of the project, we thought that Diogo's mother is one woman, Elvira. And we discover after dinner in Elvira's home and sing happy birthday in Elvira's happy birthday, and we discover that this woman are not the mother of Diogo. And why it's not the mother? Well, because it's usual in that community that they are created by other women not the real mothers, the biological mothers. And this Diogo teach us a lot of things and a lot of moments. And when Diogo goes out in freedom, it's one of the inmates that continue work with us. I don't know, we have a local advisory team. Well, a group of experts of universities, you know, a group of experts. But in the same level, we have Hugo, researchers like Baz, and mothers, 2 mothers, and 2, the director, sorry, that's very important. No, this is very, very important. In the same level, in the same table, discussing the future of the project, we have the director of the prison, 2 former mothers of inmates and 2 ex-inmates. This is very important. One of those, it's Diogo. And it's very significant that we invited Diogo to come and to speak, not to the public, to give a testimony of, no, speak to their own friends, but speak as one of us. So the lights, we are all equals. And anyone want to speak? Well, there is one want to speak. Stand up and go. It's the voice of all of us, but it's also a voice with a commitment with their experience and that other friends. Diogo, until now, lives in Scotland, have a beautiful family, worked as a great professional, and I don't say every week, but every month, phone to me, Paulo, how are you? How are you? Diogo, what about you, your family? Thank you so much. I want to thank you because our meeting, it's the experience, our meeting are so strong in our lives. And Diogo, speak in the name of all of us.
Thank you, Paulo.
Eu não cantei nada. Eu não percebo, não cantei nada.
Just to say that the main question that Diogo left the audience with was why, and it's quite related with some things that were said during the morning, why do you continue looking at us differently? Why do you continue judging us when we've committed, we've made our wrong actions, we paid our time, why do you continue judging us after we leave? And this was done, you know, towards the audience in under a very heavy lights, heavy situation. So finally, I have at least 2 questions from public, and we really need to close at past. Duarte is already looking at me like, be aware that. So maybe I will address this to whoever wants to grab it, leaving Baz with priority once you still haven't talked after sitting. What advice would you give to someone who wanted to bring an art form to prisons? How would one begin? Would you like to grab this one, Baz? Or I know Paulo wouldn't mind.
I guess I would have 2 pieces of advice. One would be, why do you want to do that? Interrogate your motives very, very carefully and clearly, and how much of it comes back to you and your desire to do this versus how much is this going to benefit. And to that end, I would say also ensure that whatever you're doing, ensure that there is continuity between inside and outside. And because I think for a lot of people, there's very much this romanticized idea about going in the prison and being able to provide these kinds of things inside the prison. But what are you doing for people who come home? Are you as motivated to look after and support the issue of those who are coming home as you are those on the inside? And consider what you might do in that space when it's not as much of a romanticized setting.
Thank you. Ginny, do you allow me to give Paulo the floor? Because there's a question related with this one, which is we discussed, which is the profile of somebody that actually wants to work in such a setting. Paulo, would you like to talk a bit about that, because it's quite related with the question?
The profile. We must be well with ourselves. We need to find people that are quite well with ourselves. No problems, no personal problems, no dramas, nothing. We must be resilient. I believe in the power of the art. So we must have something special to offer in the artistic point of view. Cinema, photo, choir, music, dance, theater, who knows? If we want to do something, we need to have quality in the artistic point of view. It's not enough to have good intentions. And love, I don't think we don't need to be afraid of the word love. We need to work love. Love, it's a relation with a special power. And this is very important. Then, we need to work in a team, more important than the individual profile. We don't do nothing alone. No one, doesn't exist gods. We need to work in team. In team with the artistic team, but with regional team. It's not because it's funny to have the chief of the guards to kill the director. Well, it's fun. But it's not because of that. It's because
on stage,
the chief
on
of the...
stage.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
This was done on stage.
On stage.
With Don Giovanni, so nobody killed nobody. It was just a performance.
Thank you. We choose the chief of the guards because it's the expert in guns. Just because of that. It's an expert in guns. It's the best guy to shoot. And some inmates also, of course. But we need to work in team because no one have the total profile to work. Team inside of the prison, guards, direction, professionals, and outside of the prison. We need to work with the community. And sorry, I need to underline this because it's more important than the individual profile. We just need to be a good artist and be well with us.
Thank you, Paulo. I see Duarte looking at me, so I'm gonna just put one more question to the table, and it's also from the public. What do you all think about the voyeuristic dynamic that Baz was talking about related to your work? And this is a bit related also with tokenism and something like that. So would you like to address this?
I would like to. And I hear everything you say. But I think in a way, sometimes it's a luxury to have angst about this because the need is so great. The need is so great. And it shouldn't be so great. It shouldn't be us guys going in. The government should be stepping up and the taxing should be done and it should actually be part of a civilized society. And we don't live in a civilized society. So prisons are reliant, in my country anyway, on voluntary groups going in. And I feel that the need is so great that all those other concerns about are you doing it for your own ego or are you this or you're that, what I notice is that these prisons would completely fall apart if these voluntary organizations weren't going in. They would, and I know this because we work with the prisoners. We do the through the gate, and I completely believe that whole business. It's no good just, there are wonderful initiatives like the Pimlico Opera, for instance, which I'm sure you know of. They go in, they do an amazing thing. They're working at a highest level with great professionals, but then they leave. They leave, and there's no follow through, there's no continuity, there's no, you know what I mean? And I think it's this business of needing to be there week in, week out, reliable, dependable, and there for when people come out. So I really feel the voyeuristic, the ego, all of that is a sort of luxury of angst, you know, to me. I feel the priority is get in there, roll up your sleeves, work hard, be dependable, and get your shit together.
Thank you. Baz, could you...
So I really think, I think it's both and. And I think that we do have to say, yes, I agree. And all the world over, there are voluntary organizations and NGOs doing the work that government should be doing. And so you then start to say, wait a minute, am I propping up the very system that I want to see radically undermined? Am I doing it? Yes. Am I doing it for good reason? To save lives, to keep sanity? Yes. But is that still an inherently troubling contradiction? The ways in which we prop up the system that we want to undermine. And so it doesn't say don't do this work. It says, are we sure that even as we're doing this work, which is life-saving work, make no bones about it, right? As we're doing that work, are we at the same time really working hard to create the systemic change that we want, which includes governments not funneling certain peoples into the system, which includes providing access to resources, and so on and so forth. Are we doing all of that, or are we overemphasizing one particular thing? And that is incumbent upon us to think about as doers in this space.
Thank you.